Good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to Monday Motivation webinar series. And today we have not one, but now we have two moderators for these sessions. We have our regular moderator, Dr. Tushar Agarwal. He's a pediatric orthopedic surgeon and he has his own hospital by the name of Asta Hospital in Kandivali, Mumbai. And we also have with us Dr. Satyan Mehta, who is a consultant spine surgeon from Mumbai, having his own clinic in Khar. So I hand over to Dr. Tushar Agarwal to introduce today's speaker and the topic.
Good evening, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us again. We are back on Monday Motivation on Ortho TV. And I must say that we must be doing something good. We are generating a lot of attention. We are generating a lot of audience. And we are getting, lovely faculty. So today evening, we have Dr. Abraham, who is a very, very senior physician. He's a dermatologist who was with the NHS in UK. Roughly in 97, he gave up clinical practice, and after that, he has trained himself in various aspects of life coaching, in mind programming, in neurolinguistic programming. And from then onwards, he has taken it as his mission to cater to human beings to improve their potential. In one of our previous programs, we heard Captain Apte speaking that there are two aspects. One is the mind and one is the body. If the body is not working, use the mind to control the body. And if the mind is not working, use the body to control the mind. So we'll take this forward. And Dr. Abraham, now we hand over the screen to him and he'll be taking a talk for roughly 40-45 minutes. I would earnestly request all the audience to quickly punch in their questions on WhatsApp so that we can then barrage him with the questions and really extract the maximum mileage of our session. And I also welcome my co-moderator, Dr. Satyan, who takes his valuable time off. Spine surgeons are the busiest surgeons of the country, so it's a pleasure to have him on board. Thanks a lot. And over to you, sir.
Good evening. This is Dr. Abraham. I'm a little, like I said, I was a little apprehensive speaking to doctors because I'm one of those old-fashioned guys. I did my MBBS from Trivandrum, MD from All India Institute. 97, I gave up my career because I was a little disturbed by the over-commercialization, technical advancement, and rather impersonalization of the medical profession. So when I was in the UK, I came across neurolinguistic programming, and for the first time in my life, I realized that I'm as good as anybody else, and I wanted to come back to India. And my aim is to spread the awareness so that young people, and especially in the health service, we can do much more than what we are doing at the moment. So I'm just going to take you through a few slides, and then I hope you can see the slides.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I basically have a few things about the patient. It's basically the uniqueness of each patient. Each one is different from the others. Then there is the emotional, psychological, and contextual aspect of each patient. Then the most important thing is what is the meaning that the patient has about the illness or his perception, and what is the meaning we have for the perception of the patient, and the social context. And again, a very important factor is the patient has got untapped resources. Only thing is he seems to give more emphasis to his disease than to his. So the job of us is to really uncover the untapped resources, make him aware so that we have an equal partner in our process towards healing. The doctor is a human being who practices medicine, and it's not the degree that matters. And in that context, the patient is also a human being who has a disease and is not the disease. Sometimes the problem we happen is we have this Cartesian dualism. We separate the mind from the body, and we seem to cater only to the body part of it, and sometimes we take for granted or do not give enough importance to the power of the mind in the healing process. And then we have this reductionist phenomenon. A patient to us is sometimes a diagnosis to be tested and treated rather than a human being who has a disease. The communicative part of the medical professions often is used only to help proper diagnosis and to help the treatment schedule rather than understanding the patient or explaining the patient the way the patient would like things to be explained. I just put this screen on because Ubuntu means I am because of you. Please remember, we exist as doctors because we have the patients. The patients needs to be given enough respect because without them we do not exist. Let's look at the subject in general. Everything starts in the mind as a thought. I have lots of thoughts. All of you have lots of thoughts. But the way we arrange thoughts is different from each other. And therefore, the way we understand is also different. And this influences the way we speak and behave. The patient also has got a lot of thoughts. But in one respect, the patient arranges thoughts differently compared to us. In neurolinguistic programming, the study of how our mind works, the structure of subject action, basically, it rather than going into the content, it looks at how we manage our mind, and therefore how we manage dictates the way we understand and behave. Therefore, we try to explain to the patient or make him understand that how they manage their mind, and that is why they have this opinion about perception about their disease. So basically, it's the thoughts. The thoughts produce the understanding and therefore the behavior. The problem is the behavior is associated with the emotions, and therefore that's why it's so difficult to change the behavior. But the thoughts are not associated with emotions, so it's easy to change the thoughts. Look at what we have. Our mind is like a 1 million GB Nectar PC. This is the latest 5 Windows operating system, the 5 senses of your mind. We have all got this computer in our mind, but why aren't we all so brilliant? Because I think God has got a fantastic sense of humor. He forgot the instruction manual. This is the only PC that comes without a driver software. The mind, the problem is, it is the conscious mind and the unconscious mind that causes the problem. The conscious mind has got, it's like a default screen in the computer. It has a limit of 7 plus or minus 2. That means at one moment in time, you can concentrate on 1 or 2 items. Okay, so how does it involve us? When I'm speaking to you now, I have to bring it to my conscious awareness what to say. I can bring about 3 items. So my whole talk today is divided into chunks of 2 or 3 thoughts. So as I speak to you, you're getting lots and lots of thoughts coming to you in the way I would like to arrange. Now you manage thoughts differently. Therefore, from this array of information that is coming to you, you pick out the ones that you like. And therefore, what I say and what you heard are 2 different things, and therefore what you understand. So this happens with patients also. Patients say the way they like to be, they like to talk to you. And they have this problem that you are very busy, you've got a little time, and in that short time, I have to say everything. So, and they can say only 2 things at one time. So they arrange their thought differently, and you get a lot of thoughts coming to you. And now, as doctors, our aim is to diagnose. So from this, we pick out elements of what the patient says, which will help us diagnose and treat. But we forget that the structure in which the patient communicates is showing how we process this information. And then if you spend at least half a minute to understand the structure, you will be able to communicate better to the patient, and because you are now communicating the way the patient processes information. But we don't do that. He says something, we pick out what we want to understand, we diagnose and treat, and then we speak the way we like to speak, regardless, with not much consideration on how the patient would like to understand things. The conscious mind is how we arrange thoughts. The unconscious mind is our library of thoughts. And the other thing it happens is the law of attraction principle. Now, patient has got a dream. The medical condition is what is stopping him from his dream. Very often when the patient comes to you, we ask the patient, what is the problem? That's where the problem starts in the first place. If only you did this, If you ask your patient, okay, just imagine all your problems, I will solve all your problems, then what will that be? Suddenly, you have switched the focus of the patient from the disease to his dream, which was actually what is so important to him. And when you start focusing on his dream, he suddenly gets excited, he desires, and now he will help you because you're the only one who listened and only one who talked about his future rather than on the problem. But sometimes in talking about the problem, we make the patient into a disease. And the other thing is, we create movies. We are all movie makers. When you worry, you're running a worry movie inside your mind. Now, please remember, patients come with lots of movies about their thoughts and their worries. And if you want to help the patient, rather than helping change the behavior, you help him change his movie. So replace his movie of the disease and his worries with a movie of what will happen when you have finished treating him and then what all he can do. So replace the movie of the disease with a movie of his hopes and desires. And suddenly he will earn to get, he wants to get the dream that you have helped him think in his mind, and therefore you now have a cooperative patient. We have 5 senses to gather information. Of the 5 senses, we concentrate, the smell and taste is not very important as far as communication is concerned. So the 3 major senses are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And even in this, we have a special preference for one more than the other. Just look at all of you. Just take a holiday that you all enjoy. Go back to memory. When you go back to memory, for some of you, the happiness and the fun and the enjoyment and the experience comes in your mind. For some of you, you may feel happy, but still pictures predominate the memory. That means those of you who saw pictures, you opened the visual window first, and those of you felt happy, opened the kinesthetic window first. And very few of you auditory. That means the languages that we speak in health is visual language, auditory language, and kinesthetic language. The problems that we have in our communication with patients is the patient might tell you, doctor, I don't feel good at all. I'm very unhappy. Now he's using unhappy and I don't feel. That means he's using feeling words. That means his preferred window is feeling. And if you tell the patient, look, I'll show you. Look at the X-ray. This is how it is. You're using visual words. You're talking 2 languages. The patient will hear, but the patient will not listen. So when patients describe their symptoms or their problem to you, sometimes they may tell story. Listen to the words that they use when they describe the problem. That means you now have an idea about how they structure their communication. And then now you've got words that they use, their preferred words. And when you speak to them, use their words, not your own, in describing the problem. And this is what happens when patients come to you. They have a deep structure, lots of things to say. But what is possible is only the 7 plus or minus 2, which the words and the body language. So if only you can give them a feeling that you are able to understand things about them, they themselves are not able to express until they feel that here is a doctor who seems to understand me much more than I do. And therefore, what happens is when the patients have so many things to say, they generalize, they delete information to make it easy for you to understand in the 10 minutes or 3 minutes. When I speak to doctor, they sometimes come and tell me, doctor, we have only 3 minutes per patient. I said in that 3 minutes, if you spend 1 minute giving the patient a feeling that you're listening, the 2 minutes will be long enough. Because suddenly the patient feels that there is one doctor who listens. Why do we communicate? We communicate because something has to be achieved. Stephen Covey's book says, start with the end in mind. So before you communicate with the patient, have an idea, this is what I want to achieve. Then your communication will be more effective, to the point, and will not get sidetracked. The other thing is, the major part of communication is intrapersonal. We sometimes have a lot of internal dialogue, maybe from our past experience. When patients comes to you, we might be thinking about what to do and what we are going to do. And there was so much of internal dialogue in our mind that we sometimes, it's not possible for us to listen to the patient. So we need to empty our mind. We talk to patients. And the other interesting thing about communication with patients is our brain cannot process negative commands. We do that frequently in our sessions. I'll give you a simple example. For the next one, I know most of you are intelligent people. For the next 1 second, don't think about an elephant, especially a white elephant with a blue tail. For our mind to not to think about it, we have to. So sometimes if you tell your patient, don't worry, it won't pain. Rather than saying it won't pain, tell them, I will make it okay for you. So that words that you use with don't will make them make sure that they're thinking about it. And so that is what we need to be very clear when we talk to patients. Do not use negative sentences, because they'll have to first imagine the scenario before they can remove it from their mind. And our mind is like one of those TV stations. Okay, our eyes, our senses are our reporters. We take the information to our senses, we take it to our mind, and we edit. This is where we do the edition. We edit and we see the thing in our mind, and that dictates our emotions, and therefore our behavior is based on the thing that we see in our mind and not the reality. So as patients, when patients come to you, we edit. And therefore what we understand is what we wanted to understand. We generalize, we delete, we distort information. Then we have something called frames. We have in our mind things about other people that frames us in thinking. So the 5 senses are like 5 windows, and NLP is linguistic. So when patients speak to you, at least for 1 minute, listen to the words that the patient uses when they speak to you. They're giving you valuable information of how they would like you to speak back. And so when patient describes, there's a word that they use to describe difficulty in addition. The other thing that they give you is the unconscious non-verbal signals. Non-verbal can be faked, but unconscious cannot be faked. If I ask you to imagine a scene in your mind, a nice picture in your mind, your eyes tend to go up, because we put our pictures up. If I ask you to imagine how you feel, your eyes tend to go down, because this is how we tend to feel. Therefore, again, when you communicate with the patients, if they are saying, doctor, look, doctor, it's not clear to me, they have used look, clear, and the eyes went up. So they have given you 3 indications that their world is visual. So then you must use visual words when you speak. If the patient comes and says, doctor, I don't feel good, and they look down, they have given you again 2-3 information that they are using the visual, the feeling sense more, and therefore they are telling you, they are giving you indication. Then the power of metaphors and frames. Sometimes when you give information, our logical mind tends to analyze. But if you tell a story, or if you say that, I saw another patient and this is what happened, and in listening to the conversation, the patient takes it as an information, but unconsciously it goes to the mind as instruction. So if you want to give an instruction to the patient, tell it as a form of a story. Because the patient says the doctor is only telling a story of somebody else's conversation. He listens as a story, but the information goes in unconsciously as instruction. Then frames. Frames are templates in our mind. We have frames about patients. When I went to Delhi, All India Institute, what they used to call me is, hey, Madrasi, because from the north, most people from south are Madrasis. So sometimes we have generalization of North Indian, South Indian, Hindu, Muslim, Christians. In the medical field, we have generalization based on diagnosis or other categories. It is important for us to have frames because it helps us understand things, but sometimes frames also restrict information that comes. So when you're talking to patients, the best thing to do is to take off frames. Listen to the word, let the words come in. And sometimes you get other information coming in as well. So again, the other thing is sometimes patients will come and tell you, oh, my disease has got no cure. Maybe it's a cancer. So he says, oh, doctor, my disease has not got any cure. And then if you add the word yet, If you say your disease has no cure yet, suddenly you've opened the world for that patient, because no cure becomes possible cure later. So that magical word of yet reframes the communication and opens up the world. Okay, this is what we do as priming. So basically, if your communication is effective, the therapeutic magic begins by enabling to alter the firing of neurons in the mind conversationally. And therefore, if you are perfect in communication, you are actually doing microsurgery with language as tools. Again, rapport. The patient should feel that you are also another human being who has at the moment certain facilities to help him. There is no difference between the patient and you, except that both of you are human beings. Only thing is that you got some knowledge which will help them. So basically, rapport is very important. Sitting like that, and very often I often seen that. I always tell doctors that when they communicate with patient, make the patient sit on the side so that there is no table between them, because the table is a barrier. And then you can match the way they sit. If they are sitting backwards, lean backward. They're sitting forward, you also lean forward, because you're respecting his interest or his intention to speak very, very much to you. When they lean forward, they are actually wanting you to pay more attention. And when you also lean forward, you're matching. This is called mirroring. And sometimes that helps. So you match tone. If they are speaking in a high tone, you also raise your voice a little bit. So you also create an element of excitement in your voice. So you match tone, you match body language, mirroring. And the other thing is you're matching. If they're using visual words, you use visual words. If they're using auditory words, you use auditory words. If they're using kinesthetic words, you use kinesthetic. You match tone, modality, and body language. So rapport is a feeling of oneness that you create with the person with whom you're communicating. And the moment the patient feels that you are like them, you treat them like another human being, magic happens. The state of mind is also important. Patient comes with a frightened state of mind. And then they see this big hospital and a lot of people in gowns and uniforms. And therefore, sometimes, if you can improve his state of mind, the state of mind influences the immunity. And therefore, if you can improve his state of mind by telling about dreams and other interesting things that you're going to do, it makes a tremendous influence in the way the patient's prognosis also. The other thing is, so far I've been telling you how information comes into your mind. Now I'm going to tell you how the information is processed inside the mind. And these are called meta programs, because meta program is, suppose you have a laptop, you load programs into the laptop, but the laptop needs a system called the operating system, which arranges the program. So because of the 7 ± 2 restriction of your conscious mind, the processing part of your mind arranges your information in the sizes that it suits them. Just like that, you also got a meta program. When patients speak to you, your mind processes information in sizes that it can take. In addition to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, it also organizes the sizes. So let's look at a few of them. Proactive people and reactive people. Proactive patients are the ones, when you talk about one surgery, immediately, okay, let's do it. They want immediate action because they're very proactive. And there are some reactive people, the opposite, is when you tell them about a surgery or anything like this, they'll wait. And only then you say, okay, come on. Only then they will come. So proactive people are impatient. Reactive people want you to do the initiation. Then the interesting one is the towards and away from people. Towards patients are the one, they will agree with you only if they can see the benefit of your surgery. So if you tell them after the surgery, you will get this benefit, they are attracted. The opposite is the away from people. These people, if you tell them the benefit, they will not get attracted. You must tell them, if I do the surgery, then you will have no more complication. They are the ones who are the avoiders. They are avoiding things in their life. Therefore, they are always wanting any treatment schedule or any medicine which will help them avoid problems. So the language are two different things. If you tell a towards person that if you take this medicine, you'll have no problem, they are not excited. You should tell a towards person, tell them what they will benefit. Away from patients, you must tell them what they can avoid by taking the medicine or undergoing the surgery. Then you have these options and procedures. I'm sure sometimes some of you are driven up the wall by, if you tell them one treatment schedule, they say anything else, anything else. They are the ones who will take 3 or 4 medical opinions because they are not satisfied with one option. Procedure people will come and tell you, doctor, this is my problem, you tell me what to do. But they only tell you what to do. If you prescribe them a medicine, they go to the shop and the medicine is not there, they will not think, oh, I should come and ask you. They will not take the medicine. And if you ask them, why didn't you take the medicine? They say, you told me the medicine in the shop is not available, so I didn't take it. So you have to tell them, if it's not in the shop, you must buy another one. Only then will they do it. They are very procedure oriented. Then you have general people and specific people. The general people are they'll tell you, okay, what all treatment do you have, doctor? They use this. This an unconscious non-verbal. They wave the arm like this. These people they have no attention span. You have to give them an overall view and give them instruction in letter. You say you read it later. If you give them detail, they get lost. The specifics they'll count on that. Okay, doctor, what should I do? Then what should I do? You have to give them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points only. Then will they do it? Now we come to the most difficult patients, the internal. I know everything type of patient. Oh, I have seen a lot of orthopedic doctors before. I've read some orthopedics when I came. These are the Googled patients. They already have a lot of information. And therefore, if you tell them, I know better, they will not accept. So the best way to treat with these people is give them the information and tell them, you know that already. I'll give you the statement, I'm sure you know that already. Then they'll accept it because it is an information that they already know, you are just pointing it out. The opposite is the external people. They want you to tell them what to do, and they will do only what you tell them to do. Then the other interesting thing is this, the way we arrange time. If I ask all of you to think about something that you're going to do next week or next month, I can bet you can see it somewhere in front or towards your right. True? If you think about next week or next month, you can see it somewhere to your right. And if I ask you to remember something that happened last week or last month, you might see that picture somewhere to your left or behind. So that means we have a spatial arrangement of how we process thoughts. So my past comes like this and goes to the future. Okay, now look at the difficulty that you might sometimes face. You are now sitting opposite, facing me. Okay, my future is this side and my past is here. So if I'm asking Dr. Mehta, if I'm going to tell you something that I want to do next week, I will point to my future, which is your past, and you will not get motivated. And also one other thing is, suppose the patient had a very bad experience in the past, and you are going to make it better next week, but you keep pointing to the past, you are making them remember what happened in the past. So please remember, when patients talk to you, look at where they are looking, and that indication of the eyes will show you where their future or past is, or they might even point. They might say, okay, doctor, this happened here, but look at what can I do? So they are, without them knowing, they're telling you where their past is and their future is. So when you give them instruction, point to their future, not to their past. It might be your opposite. So these are subtle things that will make a tremendous amount of difference in the way we communicate. Because it doesn't matter how brilliant a doctor you are and how brilliant a communicator you are, if I don't understand, what's the point? So that is basically what it is. Then perceptual position. Very often, how many of us have been patients? I always say that a doctor should first be operated upon before he starts operating, because he realizes what it is to be a patient. So sometimes before we have to say something, occasionally it's a good idea before patients come, sit in the patient's chair and look at you. And just ask yourself, will I listen to everything that I am telling you? For the first commandment is, thou shalt not bullshit your patient. So they'll see through you. And the other interesting thing is, I want to introduce something called Baroque music. Baroque music is where the beats are 60 to 62 beats per minute or less, mainly by Mozart, Handel, Bach, Vivaldi, Hariprasad Chaurasis, music, flute, violin, where the music is very soft, and if you play this music in the background very softly, we are not actually listening to it. It synchronizes, it slows down the heart rate, makes the patient calm, and makes them go into alpha state. I remember when I was working in the UK, the surgeons used to come with this music, put it in this, and when they operate, they play this music. And that has a tremendous effect on the post-operative care. The other interesting thing is about brain gymnastics, the movements which will trigger different parts of the brain. If I'm left-handed, my right brain is the dominant brain. If I'm right-handed, my left brain is the dominant brain. Sometimes we need to do things with the opposite non-dominant hand so that we develop and the synapses in the non-dominant part of the brain, and therefore the brain as a whole becomes more complete. Stress is like electricity. Stress in small doses it motivates us, in large doses it distresses us. I often have this apprehension about stress management courses. I fight with psychologists because I tell them, you attend any stress management course, you will learn all about stress, and I'm sure most of us relate to the stress, and therefore after a stress management course, we become more stressed. So what we are saying is, if I got stressed, I've arranged my thoughts in a stressful way. If I show you this is how you arrange thoughts, the arrangement of thoughts is under our mind, and therefore we can manage our thoughts better so that we don't have stress. So you have an event, a perception of the event, and the reaction of the perception. The event, you may not have much control, but you can control the way you perceive. Therefore, you can control your reaction. So, and how many of you seen the movie Patch Adams? Robin Williams.
Yeah. Seen that one.
I think most of us should see, because he is my kind of a doctor. Okay. So I think it's I think I'll give you more time to discuss, because I think I've given you an overall view of what I wanted to say. In a ship, the air conditioning failed. They tried all sorts of things, nothing would work. Okay. Finally, an old AC mechanic came and told the captain, "Can I do something about it?" So the captain said, "Okay, you go into." He went to the boiler room, looked at all the pipes and valves, and suddenly he tapped one red valve. The AC started working. Captain was very happy. He said, "Give me the bill." The bill came, charged for rectifying the AC, rupees 10,000. Captain was furious. He said, "The old man, you spent 5 minutes in the boiler room, tapped one valve. How can you charge 10,000? So the person said, "Okay, I'll give you another bill." Next day, the bill came, charged for tapping the valve, rupee 1. Charged for knowing which valve to tap, rupee 9,990. Okay, so I think I've taken only 30 minutes because you guys are busy, so I won't spend more time. I think I've made you aware of a few valves in your life which you probably took for granted.
Yeah. No, great, sir.
Satyan, just a second. So first, sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
So I have done a couple of courses on NLP, and I must say the course lasts for 5 to 7 days.
Yeah.
So you have actually summarized the whole 7 days program very well in our own context, and it's very, very important. Starting from day one, from delete, distort, generalize, to various things, the teachers, perceptual positions, metaphors, timeline, everything you've covered in context to a doctor-patient equation. So it's absolutely wonderful, and it's not easy what you have done, because honestly, there is no book out there which says so much about a doctor-patient equation and NLP. And I'm sure it's your years of experience which has really helped you frame it. And while our talk was going on, the one person whom I could see was Satyan, and I could see his own eye movements. He moved it once to the left and up, so he was thinking, and he was moving across his own timeline. So now we'll quickly go over to Satyan and we'll ask him what he was thinking about. And I'm sure, being a spine surgeon, it is even more relevant Of course, it's relevant to all of us, but for spine surgeons to convince patients to get on to the table, and even for an indicated case, Satyan would concur to the fact that it's very exasperating to actually tell them that they actually require a major treatment.
Yeah, let's just wait for Dr. Abraham to come back.
Sorry, it was raining. I just closed the door.
Yeah. Sir, I wanted to actually ask you a few things about your talk before we go to Tushar's comments about convincing patients. Why do you think this is left from right thing? Is it from your past to your future? Is it because of our habit of reading from left to right, or would it be different?
I think it's more of an inborn thing. If you are left-handed, it can switch. So most often from Richard Bandler and John Grinder, the people who discovered NLP, and this is what they observe, that people who are right-handed tend to have their past towards their left and the future towards their right. It's got nothing to do with the way their brain processes. That's the way our mind works. And it's very simple. Yeah. Sometimes it can be front and back also.
Yeah.
That's why we say, let's look forward to it and put our past behind.
Yeah, it would be funny to see the Arabs thinking the other way and maybe the Chinese thinking the other way if it was reading. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
In a way, that has got some relevance. That's got some relevance, but this is more practical.
So in a NLP program,
so one point
down.
Go on.
So they also talk about thinking up and down. So it's advisable not.
The thinking up is we tend to put our pictures up. So when you imagine a scenery, we tend to look up. If I ask you, imagine, suppose I put ice and you're sitting on ice. Imagine how your bottom feels. When you look, you tend to look down to experience it. And therefore, when patients look up or down, you can know. The other interesting thing is, our left brain is a logical brain, the right brain is the dreamy, creative brain. The brain is crosswired. So if I ask you to imagine a new hospital that you're going to build, you look up to visualize the hospital, and then you look to the right to access the left brain. So this is how you look right to access, to create a picture, and you look left to remember a picture because it's crosswired. And that is why there's a movie I would like you to see. It's called Negotiator. Kevin Spacey and Samuel Jackson acts in the movie. When you tend to lie, you tend to look up and to your right. You're constructing the information. When you remember, you look to the left. But if all good liars, we look at anywhere else, but that's not the point. Okay? So we tend to put our construction to the right, remembering to the left. When we are feeling, we tend to look down to the right. And when we are talking to ourselves, we tend to look down to the left. These are called eye accessing cues. The movement of your eye, which will give you, will give the other person a cue of where you're going in your mind to access information. Because when I speak to you, you must have a collaborative element. So when I say something to you, you go into your mind, do a Google search and says, does what Dr. Abraham saying, is that any relevance to me? And where you go is indicated by the way you move your eyes.
So Dr. Satyan gets a patient who comes for a revision spine surgery, who has had a very bad experience with the past spine surgery.
Yeah.
So what kind of a body language or VAK does he create for the patient, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, so that he feels that the next surgery is definitely going to solve his problem?
That depends on the preferred modality of the patient. You must know whether the patient is visual or kinesthetic. It has gotten and also when patient is talking about a past bad experience, don't point to his past, which is your future, to talk about the surgery they're going to do tomorrow. Point to his future, which is maybe your past. And also talk to him in the way, if the patient is visual, use visual words, auditory words, or kinesthetic.
So can you just little bit more elaborate on this? It's a little confusing. I got lost somewhere. So let us say, now this is an actual situation, like tomorrow someone sees a patient at 11 a.m. and the patient really deserves a revision spine surgery. right? And just 2 months back, he has undergone a spine surgery for which he's got a very suboptimal outcome. So how does...
First of all, sir, how do you make out whether the patient is visual, auditory?
Yeah, that you must know. Then he
How
will
do you
always
do that,
he will always point to his past when he's talking about the previous spine surgery. So that is so that rather than talking about then, always point to the other his future when you're talking, because don't let him go back to the past. And also we have got other system by which you can change the picture, but that's another whole chapter altogether.
Satyan, what I is trying to say is we establish a rapport with the patient, okay, and what I had understood is that we can't really in a short conversation make out visual, auditory or kinesthetic.
You can. That's the thing. If you listen, because when they start speaking, they'll use words. Listen to the words that you're using. Look at where the eyes are going. And therefore, you will have an idea about, within minutes. I'll give you an example. Tushar, you just say a sentence to me. Just describe a holiday to me.
That's difficult for me to describe, but I can describe my OPD today to you.
Okay, describe what you like about your OPD. In a few sentences, just describe what is that you like about your OPD.
So I saw a lot of patients today and...
See, okay, I know you are a kinesthetic person because you said you enjoyed. You didn't say your OPD was very clean and neat and bright. Can you understand? So sometimes words that you use to describe will make it. I'm an extremely kinesthetic person, so we will get along very well. My wife is extremely visual, and so we have lots of problems. I thought my wife was mad. Now I know why she's mad. I've been in Delhi for 5 years. I saw Taj Mahal on the last day because I don't like seeing places. So when Neeraj was explaining to me about Taj Mahal, Kovalam and all those places, I don't like to go Kovalam or Tekadi or Munnar. I don't like seeing places. I would spend maybe 1 hour with you alone, sitting with you and talking and enjoying your company. That's why I don't like.
You have guts, sir. That you are able to say this, but whenever we decide that something wrong is happening, it is me who is mad and never my wife.
So then you must
say that in your face. I say to you.
So Abraham, sir, you just mentioned one key word we got enjoyed was kinesthetic. So can you give us other keywords to show that somebody is visual, auditory or kinesthetic? What are the other?
The visual person will say, they'll come and say, look at this. It's not very clear to me. Show me the X-ray again. They use the word look, show, clear, bright, and like that. The kinesthetics will use words like, I don't feel, I can't grasp what you're saying. It's a thumping pain. They use... otherwise, the visual person will describe a pain as shooting pain, shooting pain or like a lightning pain. They use lightning as to describe a pain. The lightning is visual. While auditory person is saying that, oh, it has got this, it makes a noise and I come and they'll say about the Dr. Tushar said like this and Dr. Satyan said like this. So they'll talk about other conversations. The most problematic patient is the auditory patient because he has got so much of internal dialogue, he will not listen to you. Okay. Because as soon as you say one word, they have already gone in their own direction. They talk a lot to themselves.
Okay. Well, that's an eye opener in a visual way, I must say. Rapport building has a lot to do with language, sir. Suppose we don't have a language. Suppose I get a Gujarati patient and I'm not terribly conversant.
Body language is the best thing. So I wish we had time. Otherwise, the patient is sitting forward, you also slowly tend to sit forward. Okay. If the patient is doing like this, very casually, you also use the same hand. So you mirror him as you're sitting. And that makes a tremendous difference. And so that's all you can do with rapport, because you don't need to understand the language at all.
It is mirroring without mimicking.
Mimicking, yes, that's fine. And like if you have a habit of shaking the head, if you shake the head, it will be mimicking. So if somebody is shaking the head, you tap your hand in the same speed. That's called cross mirroring. You move some other part of the body in rhythm with the fast movement of the other person's body. So that's called cross mirroring.
Really?
The patient is doing like this, don't do like this. You move your head or something like that. Because then you're moving another part of the body and the patient does not feel that you're mimicking.
Sir, one very important point you said is that mentioned about pain, that do not mention about their pain when you are talking to them. Mean mention in the positive.
Yes.
So how should we tell them that that do not worry, I am there. This will all become okay.
Suppose you say that I'll make your pain less. You say that I'll give you more comfort.
Okay.
Because the word pain makes him remember about the pain. You're doing the same thing, but his mind is shifted to comfort. So always, when patients come to you, just imagine, when a patient came to me one day, I asked him, what is that you want to do? Oh, I'm thinking about having my daughter's marriage in Singapore. Then the whole time I was speaking about, I said, I also been to Singapore. I've got some fantastic place. And for the next 10 minutes, I was speaking only about Singapore. And we both had a fantastic conversation. And then he suddenly realized that, doctor, you're the only one who listened to what I wanted to have. And then suddenly, everything I said to him, he started listening because I'm the only doctor who listened to him and made him talk about Singapore rather than his skin problem. And then whatever I said, he immediately said, doctor, I will do that. And he started cooperating with me so that he started listening to me, and he started listening to my instructions and everything very eagerly because I'm the only one who listened to him.
So which means engaging him in a non-clinical conversation will help.
Yes.
That's a good way of establishing a sort of a rapport.
Make him want to get better. Don't make him in a disease. A human being, I am not diabetic. I have diabetes. I am not alcoholic. I have trouble controlling my drinking habits. The moment you say have, you are now putting it as a capability. Capability can change, but identity cannot be changed. If you say, I am depressed, we always say that patients come and tell me, doctor, I am depressed. I tell them, you are not depressed. You are depressing very well. You are using depressing thoughts very well. So let's change it from a depressing thought to, so I've transferred the noun into a verb, which becomes an activity, which can be changed. A noun cannot be changed.
Sir, I always had this question with NLP course, is that it's a very active thing. You got to actively participate and you have to actively do a thing. Like, for example, whatever instructions you're doing, whatever instructions you're giving us, we have to actively do it. So there are times where, in spite of our best efforts, the person opposite or we may not be able to actively execute it.
I'll give you a simple example. You cannot actively do because you're doing it. What I'm saying is, if you practice it often enough, it becomes unconscious. Are you actively breathing now? No, you are not even aware. So because you are doing it so long, walking, talking, everything becomes natural. So in the learning cycle, you have unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. If you practice everything long enough, all these things that I told you, if you keep practicing it, it becomes unconscious, so it becomes natural. You don't have to actively do it.
There is a lot of emphasis given on limiting beliefs in neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
How to transcend your limiting beliefs. So, can you just elaborate for our sake, what is your take on limiting beliefs? So, let us say limiting belief of a patient about his cure, a limiting belief of a doctor about curing the patient, and a limiting belief of a doctor about how much he can excel in his own life.
Do you know how limiting beliefs are formed? Can you imagine a small child of 1 year old walking towards the mom and dad? He has no problem at all. He falls. He doesn't say, oh, I fell. Okay? He falls, walks. And then his parents tell him, son, you will fall. Then suddenly he hears, oh, fall. Then when he falls, it becomes knowledge. That means I have fallen. And when he keeps falling again and again, it becomes a belief. And these are called limiting beliefs. He says, I'm always falling, that I'm not good enough. So limiting beliefs are formed either from your given by your parents, your society, religion, because this is all I can do. So the best way to deal with limiting beliefs is ask him the question, what if you can? Small kids are brilliant. If you tell them you cannot go to play, they'll ask you, why not? What if I can play? So when patients come with limiting belief, the words that people use when they're using limiting beliefs are things like I should, shouldn't, could, couldn't, must. These are all words of limiting beliefs. When patients use words of limiting beliefs, immediately ask, what if I can? Challenge the limiting beliefs. The best way to deal with them is to challenge. When they say, I can't do it, it is not possible, you ask them, what if you can? And then ask them to imagine as if you can. That's the 2 steps. What if you can? Imagine as if you can.
And you feel that if we practice this, then it can become a second nature.
Exactly.
It may be difficult.
Normally, I found from experience that to teach somebody NLP, we need about 5 to 10 hours. And then, because as doctors, we don't need to practice therapy, NLP therapy very often. So what I have done is I've got a 2-day program for basic and a 2-day program for practitioner. For medical health, in about 10 hours, we can give you a comprehensive about what NLP is, how it can be used. In fact, I'm writing a book on NLP and health, and I'm collecting data. So, and the best time to introduce NLP is during the 5th to 7th semester of the medical education, because when they are starting to see patients. Because at your age, at your stage, it's a bit difficult for you to unlearn. But if you give them at the moment they're starting to see patients, that's the best time. So my request to all medical college people is, please introduce NLP during the 7th semester or during the...
I agree with you, sir. This I can tell you from my own experience that when I was in my, third year of medicine, the first time I saw a child who had rickets, and as soon as I saw the rachitic rosary, I gasped and I said, oh my. And immediately the mother got upset. She's covered the child and took the child away. So the examination was over. I couldn't see at all now. So at that stage, it would have been much more helpful if I would have had that knowledge that, you've got to see them very, as you're seeing your own friend. Yeah.
So if all of you can help me, I'm willing to train the faculty in any medical school so that they can start teaching them. And the best subject department is preventive medicine, social medicine.
You feel that the PSM department should actually incorporate this as a part of the syllabus?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm willing to go anywhere to teach them. In fact, in the Trivandrum Medical College, I used to go on my own and take sessions for during the preventive medicine posting. And the students all liked it. But the principal came and told me, doctor, we have no time. Just imagine you're training medical students for 5 years. You can't spend 3 hours to teach them about human beings. Then what are we teaching? We are now producing doctors who are paid crores of money to get admission, and all they want is a degree so they can then practice. That's the sad part about medical education.
In the West, we do have communication skills as an important part of their training program. Yeah, and we should.
But Satyen, the problem is the communication part is all about how to speak to patients. What we are saying is that the thinking behind the communication is more important. Without that, see, if you look at all this, speaking hostage club host, they train you how to speak.
The Toastmasters Club.
Toastmasters, yes. If you look at Toastmasters, they speak fluently, but their thoughts are not, they are artificial. It's very artificial. So communication skills is taught in medical school, but that is how you communicate. But unless you know modalities and thinking style, there is no point. So you have to teach NLP and through that teach communication. But communication without NLP is of no use. You're just
Compassion will come with that.
Yeah. You're just speaking fluent English. What's the point? You all speak fluent English.
So summarizing, sir, what would you call as barriers of communication between doctor and patient?
The barriers of communication is thinking that I am correct, therefore you are wrong. We don't respect. See, what I understand is known as my map of the world. And therefore, because I arranged thoughts, I edited my thoughts. And therefore, what I understand is what I wanted to understand. And therefore, if you disagree, I think you're wrong. But now I must realize that Tushar also edited, and therefore he is also seeing an edited version. So I said, Tushar, maybe you saw it like this, I am seeing it like this. You need to respect the other person's map of the world. Number two, you must understand the language that they use and communicate through the same language that the listener uses. Modalities. Then meta programs. If you know about maps, the language and meta programs, and then finally state of mind and rapport, you have got the gist. And then finally, you use timeline to understand how they process.
So let's take a final example, which comes mostly in cold elective surgeries. You know, like for example, a patient who's got osteoarthritis of the knee, pretty bad, is in need of a total knee replacement. It's very obvious to everybody on the planet. And two people in their house have got a very unpleasant experience. One person has got infected and one person has got pain in spite of the total knee replacement. It's a pretty much common situation. So now, how do we sort of realign this person for a genuinely needed total knee replacement?
You have to rather than see, you are concentrating on total knee replacement and osteoarthritis. I wanted to shift from what he will see, hear, and feel when he has finished the replacement and what will happen to him. Make them, that's why Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. Take his mind off from surgery and what disease to what will happen after 2 years when he's walking around with a new knee. And what he will see is enjoyment. Like I tell you, if I am going to sell you a Ferrari, if I tell you, Tushar, just imagine driving the Ferrari and the air is flowing through you and you're going through Bahamas. Suddenly you start enjoying the use of the Ferrari rather than the Ferrari. It's not the product that matters, it's what it does to you. So make them want to make them go 2 or 3 years ahead. Imagine what you will see, hear, and feel when you finish the surgery and got a new knee. Then you'll want that to happen.
So, sir, you said there are two types of people, towards and away. Yeah. So, is it possible that if this patient is the away type of people, then we should
you should tell them, look, if you do the surgery, you will have no more problems now. You remember the cars? There was a motorcycle. You say, fill it and forget. So yes. Such people, they are away from thinkers. You buy this car. You buy this car for 5 years, no service. But the towards person, that is not fair. You, sir, this car has got 25 batteries, 3 lights, and not to 60 in 5 seconds. So you should tell what the car will do. The other person, what the car will help you save money. 2 types of thoughts. Towards person, tell them how much he will be healthy. Away from person, how much less problem he'll have because of the surgery.
So is there a cue word here again which tells us whether he's a away from or a towards?
Yes. Right. If I am a towards person, I'll come and say, Doctor Sahab, इस surgery से मुझे फायदा मिलेगा. Okay? Away from person say, Doctor Sahab, इस surgery से मेरा दर्द खत्म हो जाएगा कि नहीं? Now the surgery is preventing my pain. The surgery is giving me health. And you tell the wrong thing to the wrong person, he will not be convinced. And I'm sure some of you will wonder why the patient, you told them very clearly, they are not understanding. Because they are hearing you, they are not listening.
Yes, and this happens more in cold elective work. In trauma surgery, it's pretty much easy to understand.
Yeah, because there, you have no choice. It's just like golf and tennis. In golf, now NLP is tremendously used in sports. In golf, archery, shooting, till you hit the ball, you're thinking. While in shuttle, you have no time to think. The shuttle is coming, you have to hit. So that's surgery. Shuttle is surgery, while cold cases is golf.
Sir, we are heading towards the end of our time, but one last question I cannot resist asking you, since you are a dermatologist. How about treating autoimmune conditions? What is happening in autoimmune conditions?
I think you spoiled everything by asking me a question about medical science. That's the last thing. I have no clue, sir. I have forgotten.
I'm talking about it, NLP in autoimmune diseases.
NLP by changing state of mind. Unity. Anchoring, circle of excellence. Anchoring, yeah.
So I was not asking clinical, I was talking in terms.
I was scared. That's why I was scared of talking doctor. I'll give a simple example. If you are sitting somewhere and you're worried, and suddenly you hear an old cinema song which reminds you of your medical college days celebration, won't you feel happy? Then the song was part of a previous experience which brought back whole experience. So that means you have to anchor them to a fantastic experience, and then if you do that, that's why cancer patients have been tremendously improved with neurolinguistic programming, because they suddenly start seeing health, and the immunity improves.
Right. So we are bang on time, sir. It's 10:01, and we can never thank you enough. And I would be very happy, sir, if by tomorrow, if we'll draw a 10-point summary of today's talk, of course. And if you could tell us about your upcoming courses for doctors within the next month or so. And
at the moment, I don't have any courses for doctors. I only have general courses. Now it's up to you. Okay, if some of you can sit with me, I'm quite willing to develop a course for doctors. And I prefer to talk to junior doctors and medical students. And for that, I'm willing to spend any number of time, because that's one thing dear to me.
So, sir, I want to break your limiting belief that you don't have to talk to only the junior doctors. You have to talk to all doctors.
Now, what I meant was more emphasis.
Yeah, right, sir. So, with permission of the house, then we would want to conclude today's session. I want to thank every one of the audience who has joined us. Today's session was, I am sure, more useful to doctor fraternity. Though we send the message to everybody, I hope the lay people who were non-doctors also got a lot to learn. NLP is a wonderful science. I would encourage everybody to explore at their own level. You feel free to ask us questions. I'll forward it to Dr. Abraham. I'm sure he's very kind to answer most of them for us. Once again, I want to thank Dr. Abraham for taking his time off late in the night. And of course, all the audience who gave up their IPL match today, thumbs up and cheers to you for giving up your IPL. I am sure you will gain much more from our session than by seeing one more IPL match, right? So with that, thanks a lot to everybody who's on house and on board with us. Thanks a lot. Please share this video with all your friends. We'll appreciate more and more encouragement from you. Please do keep encouraging us. Thanks a lot and good night.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.